God didn't mean for us to live inside of the church 24/7, but He did mean for the church to live inside of us 24/7. You understand? And so He understands, hey, you can go and have fun and kick it with the guys and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to exclude me from that. You don't have to compartmentalize your life to say, okay, well, God ain't in over here. God is everywhere. So we need to make sure that we welcome that Spirit of God in everything that we do in life.
You're listening to the Identity Sports Podcast, where we dive into the world of faith, sports, and inspiration with athletes from across the country. I'm your host, Zach Vogel. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Identity Sports Podcast, where we dive deep into the stories of extraordinary athletes who have overcome immense challenges and emerged stronger than ever. Today, our guest is none other than Dallas Cowboys star Greg Ellis. Greg was the 8th overall pick in the 1998 NFL Draft and had a stellar career in the NFL, earning Pro Bowl honors and becoming a key defensive player for the Cowboys. With over a decade in professional football, Greg's perseverance and dedication on the field have been nothing short of inspirational. But Greg's journey doesn't end there. After retiring from football, he embarked into coaching, where he is now an assistant defensive line coach with the Dallas Cowboys and has founded an organization called Getting My Help, an initiative aimed at partnering with, employing, and training mental health care professionals. This venture underscores Greg's commitment to supporting mental health and well-being, providing crucial resources to those in need. Get ready to be inspired and motivated as we dive into Greg's incredible story of resilience, transformation, and purpose. Let's welcome Greg Ellis to the show.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Identity Sports Podcast. We're joined here today with none other than Dallas Cowboys star Greg Ellis. Greg, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Man, thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to a good time.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how we got connected. So we did an event called Tales from the Tour out in Frisco, Texas, and one of your friends, Steve Karachoff, came and was like, you know what, there's a super cool guy that you got to meet, awesome Jesus guy, awesome sports guy, threw out the name Greg Ellis, and anywhere around the Dallas and Frisco area, people know who Greg Ellis is. So it's exciting to be here with you, and just to hear some, everyone knows about the sports accolades, but kind of what goes on behind the scenes, whether you walk with Jesus or some of the mental health stuff that you're now working in. But before we get to there, tell us a little bit, what was kind of like the childhood like for Greg, leading all the way up to being drafted to the NFL?
Yeah, it was. I tell people I grew up pretty humble. We didn't have a lot of money. My mom and dad taught myself and my brother the importance of having that relationship with God and with Christ. And so they planted that seed in us really early. Um, I'm quick to tell people, Zach, that it doesn't cost money to plant the most important seed into your child. And that most important seed is to teach them the importance of having that relationship with Christ. Because no matter what we teach them, right, no matter how much money we leave them, hard times are going to come. They're going to be faced with situations that we can't help them with, right? And I'm speaking from personal experience that I see with my own kids. We love them, we want to do everything for them, but we can't. We can't, as much as we say we want to always be there, and we will as much as we can. But there are things that you're going to face in your life that your parents won't be right there on the spot to help you with the way that you want them to help you. And so I just always take the time to encourage parents, grandparents, guardians, older siblings who may take care of the little siblings, whatever role you play in a younger person's life, make sure in all the things that you're teaching a young person that you also stressing the importance of having that relationship with Christ. But now back to answering your question. Like I said, I grew up pretty humble, man. Um, Mom and dad taught me the importance of working hard. Um, they taught me, especially my dad, was whatever you want to do in life, it can happen. Don't place limitations on God. You keep God first and work hard, and good things can happen for you in your life. And I was retired from the NFL, and my mom told me one day, she said, Greg, you believed everything that me and your dad told you. And that served me well, man. It served me throughout my whole life, and it still serves me well to this day. That I believe what they told me, that you keep God first and work hard, and good things can happen for you. And all the wonderful things that God has blessed me to accomplish in this life has been based on that foundation, keeping God first and working hard. Be willing to outwork people. Me in my life, I found a lot of people, Zach, that's stronger than me, faster than me, and all that stuff. But there's one thing that I step up in this area of working hard, right? I tell people, you may be faster than me, you're going to be smarter than me, and a lot of other things, you're going to be better than me, but one thing, I'm gonna go neck and neck with you, or I'm gonna do better, and that is hard work, outworking people. And so that's something that God gives us the ability to control. And so when people say they want to be successful, I tell them, hey, it can happen for you, but are you willing to put in the hard work? And that's pride me. That's one thing I pride myself off of. But again, I give my mom and dad the credit for planting that seed also in myself, and being good soil to absorb what they planted. And I tell you, man, it has carried me and still carrying me to this very day. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the Bible's riddled with those stories too, with just David and Goliath, for instance. He's obviously a lot smaller than Goliath, but he was willing to put in the work, whether it was putting down lions and bears and different things like that. Didn't have the coolest training program, but he trusted God and worked hard, and see just how God used that and elevated that. So it's cool to hear your story too. That you can do that, and these kids that are listening, they can be encouraged by that. They may not be the fastest person on your team, but that doesn't mean that you should be outworked by someone else on the team.
No, you're exactly right, and I'm gonna throw this guy named Muggsy Bowes, and Muggsy was only 5'3" for your audience who don't know who he is, but he was a NBA basketball player at only 5'3", and I'm only bringing it up. I'm not a historian or anything like that, but I happened to see him his special on a long video. It wasn't on TV show, but it was a long interview about him. And think about that, man. He's only 5'3". Think about how many people told him there's no way you're going to the NBA, right? But he didn't buy into it. It's okay for people to tell you one thing, but man, you will be so surprised if you really conceptualize in your head that, you know what, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. But I tell people this, that you have to be careful when you're on that thin layer of ice. And what I mean by that is, are you willing to pay the price? Meaning, Muggsy had to work harder than, let's say, Shaquille O'Neal, who's 7'2" or whatever, however tall Shaq is, right? Muggsy had to do more than Shaquille because you're only 5'3". You're going to be going against Shaquille O'Neal. Imagine how the discrepancy with that height looks. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And so I tell kids, especially kids and grown-ups too, is that, are you willing to pay the price, right? And if you are, go for it. But be real with yourself, because you can get yourself in a lot of trouble by saying, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that. People are going to look at you crazy, and that's normal. Ain't nothing wrong with that part of it. But if you're not positioning yourself, if you're not lining yourself up to realistically give yourself a shot at that happening, then it's like, what are we talking about, right? So make sure, audience, that when you say, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z, whatever that X, Y, and Z is for you, God takes that serious, and you should take it serious. Just don't casually throw it out there and say, hey, man, I'm 5'3" and I want to be an NBA basketball player. It's like, okay, what are you doing to become that, right? And you have to do more than the person that's 6'7" or 7'4", whatever. You have to do more, right? So I just want to, make sure people understand, when they saying that they want to become whatever X, Y, and Z. It's like, okay, great. Are you willing to put the work in? Are you willing to sacrifice some things in your life, to give yourself the best chance for that to happen?
Yeah, that's really good. Thanks for sharing that, Greg.
Yeah.
Because again, it's easy to say, hey, I want to be a professional football player, baseball player, whatever it may be. But you got to go behind. What are you doing behind closed doors when no one's watching? Are you still working? Are you out working those people? And the same can be said with our biblical lives and our Christian lives as well. Is if
Yeah.
you're what you see on the outside doesn't match what the heart is, and God judges the heart, not necessarily the works, but the faith without works is dead. Um, but also judging what is going on the inside. Is there actual life change happening behind closed doors?
Yeah.
So it's really cool just how sports and faith just correlate so much in those aspects.
Yeah.
So you go through college, North Carolina Tar Heel. Tell us a little bit about the legacy there, and when did it kind of become in your mind? You always had the dream of I want to become an NFL player. You were working hard. Was there a time where it just kind of clicked for you, where you're like, man, this is gonna happen for me?
You know, it, that was and I hate to use the word scary because, like, when did it click for me? I don't really know that answer, to be honest with you. But it was pretty much when I got drafted that I'm like, okay, well, it happened. You know what I mean? But I would say this that it's that for me, I always and this, some of your audience are gonna say, oh, yeah, this is the perfect Christian answer to say. Is that I strive my best in my life to always do everything unto God. Case in point, my mom before the NFL, my mom and dad were custodian workers, so they would clean the schools, and they had part time jobs. And one of my mom's part time job was cleaning this daycare school. It was a church, but also had classrooms and stuff. And when I could, I would go help her. And it would take me a while to clean the toilets, and she would say, "Greg, why does it take you so long to clean those toilets?" And I said, "Because I'm doing it the best I can." And I learned something about myself. It's like everything I do, I really strive to do it unto God the best way that I can do it. And I will say that to your audience as well, is that whatever you're doing, um, you should strive to be the best at doing that, right? For one, God rewards that, right? For two, you're building up character in yourself, right? Because if I only perform well or clean the toilets well when somebody's standing there right beside me, I'm really not honing in on my toilet cleaning skills, right? And same thing with sports, right? If I'm only doing it at my best in preparation, only when a coach is standing there beside me, well, what happens when the coach is not standing there? So I'm not getting as the best possible training that I can get unless somebody is standing there. And if I'm only going to give my best when somebody is standing there, then I'm wasting opportunities, right? And so it works like a circle, if you would. And so everything you do and everything I did, especially with sports, right? I did it unto God. And I felt obligated, something inside of me that said, I want to be amongst the best. And this is what I tell kids when they say, hey, I want to be a professional athlete. What advice would you give? Have that long term dream. That's great. I want to be a professional athlete. Boom. That's long term. But there's a lot of ground between here and professional athlete, right? And so, what kids and people need to understand is that how do you get there? How do you get there effectively? In the way that I got there effectively, and the way I see other people too getting there effectively, is striving to be the best at the level that you are at, right? When you were in middle school, okay, when I first started playing middle school football, that's when I first started playing organized football. I was a long ways from being the best. I was raw and a lot of just raw talent that I didn't know that I had in me. And so but I took the time to say, okay, what do I need to work on so I can make sure next year when I come back, I'm gonna be playing. I'm gonna be one of the big dogs out there, not the puppy that has to stay on the sideline, if you would. And so, I started doing things to say, okay, coach said do this, do that. That's what he's saying is important. And so it's important to him, it's gonna be important to me. So I, worked on those things, and next year, sure enough, came back and started, and went on to high school next year. Went straight to varsity football. And of course, I didn't start. I played very little, but again, it was okay, Greg Ellis. Now, what do you need to work on to become a starter, to be amongst the best on your high school football team, right? Bust my butt and did that. Now, okay, what do you need to do to be one of the tops in the country at playing football where people are talking about football players? You may not be number one in the country, but you're not the last one in the country neither. You're in the conversation when they're talking about, giving out scholarships to go play football and, bust my butt and got that accomplished. And then, you go to college and once again, you're that small. You were the big fish in high school. Now you're that small fish. You're still the same size as the high school fish, but that fish now is in I guess a big lake when you hit college, right? And they got way bigger fish in lakes than they do in ponds. But now you have to bust your butt in college to grow into a bigger fish. And now, if you're a big enough fish, now people are talking about you around the country, and now you're in talks to be able to be drafted or, a free agent going into the NFL. Small fish again, they got to bust your butt all over again. So, long story short, that what I tell people, man, is strive and figure out what can help you to become the amongst them. You might not be the best, but amongst the best at the level that you're at, because that's the group, that's the crop that moves on to the next level. Those who fit into that category that are amongst the best. So, that's and that's small steps, right? You mentioned David earlier, but a lot of things that people don't realize about David, we all want to talk about the glamorous David killed Goliath, and it's like, well, David killed the Goliath, then he went on to become king. Yes, but it didn't happen instantaneously like that. He killed Goliath, he went back to the wilderness to continue to take care of the sheep. You see what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
it's a process, if you would, and more people have to understand that. And so when you're in that process in your season, your responsibility is strive to be the best at what God has entrusted you with right now. Because when you can be found faithful in this small territory, now God is going to enlarge your territory. And once you found faithful in that, He will continue to enlarge your territory. But if you hear complaining about everything in the world, about what you don't have this opportunity, you don't got that, you don't got this, and you sitting there crying, well, God, why won't I make it? Why can't you enlarge my territory? And God is saying, son or daughter, you hadn't come close to mastering this small territory. You had come close to mastering middle school football, but here you are want to go to the NFL. It's like you got to be amongst the best at middle school first before you have any chance to think about NFL.
Yeah, you got to be where your feet are planted.
Yep.
That's perfect. And that's, it just reminds me of Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work hard, be something done for the Lord and not for men. So
Yep.
God is there. He's always with us. And so if you're trying to do things to please your coach, and then coach looks away, and all of a sudden, what your rep was supposed to be 10, now it's 8 because coach looked away for the last 2. And then all of a sudden, you're like, why am I not going to the next level? Why am I not going to the NFL? That's a big reality check there. What would you say is kind of one of your favorite moments? And there's a lot of your time with the Cowboys.
Wow, I tell you what, it's a lot of them, man. I mean, a whole lot of them. Um, I'll give you two. Then I can give you a bunch. You let me know when you want me to stop giving you two. But two that people tend to find humor in is that my second year, right? God is blessed. I'm having an amazing second year. We are playing. I think it was Arizona, right? And so they are on our 2 yard line, like 2 yards from the touchdown. So they're about to score. They run the ball, we tackle them, and the ball comes out. Guy fumbles the ball, and the ball is just sitting there on the ground, right? And it's like nobody else saw the ball sitting there. I'm like, does anybody not see this ball just sitting on the ground? And so I go over and I pick the ball up. I'm like, maybe it's not a fumble, but you're still trained to pick it up anyway. And
Yeah.
so I pick it up, and Darren Woodson, right? Darren was our safety in those days, and Darren is put. So I was going to get on the fumble, right, instead of trying to get up, but I get to the ball and get ready to get down on it, and nobody touched me. And so Darren saw it, and so he grabs about an elbow and he's pulling me to get up. And so I'm like, okay, well, now the cat's out of the bag, right? Somebody else knows that I have this football, and it's pulling me off the ground. So I get up off the ground, and I look up. Zach don't see nothing but 98 yards of green turf, and I'm not the smallest guy, Zach. I play defensive end, bro. And so I'm like, okay, now what to do here? It's like I can probably take off running with it, but I'm probably going to get caught, and I don't want to get tackled. But do I pitch it off to somebody? I was like, yep. If I pitch it and we fumble it, the coach is going to have my head. So I said, okay. And literally, I processed all that just like that, right?
Matter of seconds. It's all
Yeah,
processes.
exactly, right. And so, but I figured, I'm like, okay, best possible solution, just run and get what you can get, right? And so I take off running. The saving grace was Arizona didn't realize that it was a fumble. And I guess the running back was under the pile, so he really couldn't get up. So I get the ball and I run, man. And some of the cap Darren was the lead one running with me, and other guys start to run with me down the field. So long story short, I was blessed to get a 98-yard touchdown fumble return my second year in the NFL. Now I'm dead tired when I get to the end zone. I lumber over to the sideline. And they trying to congratulate me. I'm like, please move, just get me to the oxygen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And so I get to the oxygen, sitting down, just sucking it all in. And Troy Aikman, remember Troy Aikman?
I do.
And so I'm only a second year guy, and this is the world greatest quarterback. Troy Aikman comes over to me, and he says, "Hey Greg, man, congratulations." He said, "Man, but hey, make sure you enjoy it because it'll probably never happen again for you because you're a defensive line. That don't supposed to happen for guys like you." And so, and I, like, okay, Troy, was that are you criticizing me or you congratulating me? But nevertheless, I get it because he was right. But this is the kind of sense of humor that God has, man. The very next game we are playing Atlanta, right? And their quarterback, dude, it was going to be a screen pass, I guess. And I guess one of our defensive line knocked down the running back that they was throwing the screen to. And somebody else was applying pressure to their quarterback. And I guess in a haste, he just kind of threw it. Man, he threw it right to me, dude. So I catch the ball, and again, you see me look like, okay,
Look what I
who
found.
should I pitch? Who should I pitch this to? Right? And I didn't fumble with it because he literally threw it right in the bread basket, right? And I'm thinking, okay, probably should pitch this one because they definitely gonna catch me. And I looked, was going to pitch, and I was like, no, if I pitch it, they fumble it, coach is going to kill me. So again, I take off running with the ball and blessed to score. That was 87 yards. Now again, I am dead tired, right? But instead of finding the oxygen, the sense of humor that was in me, I'm looking for Troy Aikman this time, right? So I go up to Troy and I said, Troy, he didn't come to congratulate me. I found him. I said, Troy, man, I thought you said it'd never happen again. And he paused for a minute, like, what are you talking about? And then I guess he remembered, then he bust out and laughed about it. And so then I went to the oxygen right after that, of course. But the ironic thing, man, again, God in the sense of humor. Of course, my pro number was 98, and the first one was a 98-yard touchdown. And my college number, high school number was no college number was 87, and the second one was the 87-yard touchdown. So I don't know what the sense of humor was about that happening. 2 games in a row of 98 and 87, my college and pro number. So I'm still looking for why that worked out that way. But there are a lot of stories, man. Playing in the league, yeah, everybody understands the money, the fame, and all that kind of stuff, and that's part of it. But the camaraderie, being around the guys,
Yeah.
stories like that, those inside stories that a lot of people don't know about. Another story, man, about this will be the last one. I told you would have to stop me on these, okay? This will be the last one. Um, my rookie year, right? And so we're in training camp, and this was old school training camp, right? Really getting after each other. And so we're in practice, and this guy named Larry Allen, right? And I go against Larry, just regular, offense versus defense kind of stuff. And Larry hit me, man, and he knocks me all off the ball. And I'm like, what just happened? I've never been knocked off the ball like that before, right? And I didn't really know who Larry Allen was. And the world didn't know him the way we know him today because he was a younger player too. He's older than me, but he wasn't he was becoming the world great Larry Allen in
Yeah.
those days. And so I get back to my dorm room that night, man. I'm talking to my wife, and she could tell that I was down. And she said, "What's wrong?" And I explained to her what happened in practice. And my wife, she said, "Well, Greg, you can, you can take the money and give it back, and we can go back to North Carolina and just get regular jobs." And I said, "No, we ain't gonna do all that. We ain't gonna do that. It ain't that bad." And so I strapped up and just went back at it the next day against, going against Larry, and was more prepared and understood that this guy is not like everybody else out here. He's a special football player, and of course, time revealed that from that day that I had that run in with him, and I shared that story because, as you know, Larry has passed this year. He's died, and so still condolences to his family. And that was a great man, contributed a lot to football, if you would. But yeah, that's my Larry Allen story.
Yeah, and rest in peace to Larry Allen. Like that's funny that your wife was like, "Well, do you really want to pack up and move out?"
Nope,
But
we didn't want to give the money back.
yeah, but you chose to dive in and to keep moving with it. So that's really cool. What kind of speak to what were some of kind of like the faith aspects in your life during your time in the NFL? Were there certain players that you really clung to that kind of helped you along the way, especially as a younger player? What was that like for you?
I got saved when I was in the 11th grade of high school. Like, again, I grew up in a Christian home, and so I always went to church. But officially, went up to the front and accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior when I was in the 11th grade. And so, fast forward, me getting to the NFL, I was a Christian, and I let it be known. Now, I didn't stand up and say, "Hey, everybody, I'm a Christian. Look at me," kind of thing. But God kept me from a lot of the bad stuff that comes along with the NFL, and so He kept me from a lot of bad decisions and a lot of bad stuff that that comes along with being in the spotlight like that. And so that kept me a lot. And so, God, I say that to say this: guys respected me as a young Christian football player, right? When they noticed that Greg doesn't go out and do a lot of the stuff that the guys do. And
Yeah,
so they quickly, of course you get some guys that are want to tease you, if you would, and kind of make fun about it because what they are doing, and I say this to some young Christians that may be in the same situation that I was in, what they are doing is they're testing you out, right? They are paying attention to see, okay, how long is this going to last, right? He out here, he don't want to curse, he don't want to drink, he don't want to come out here and chase the girls with us. But when all these women start coming at him, when all this pressure comes to him, is he going to give in? And that's what they're looking for. And when you stay the course, right, you continue practicing and walking out your faith, then guys say, you know what, that guy over there is real, right? And then they respect you because they know you're not doing this for show. They know that, like any guy that you can talk to that I was blessed to play with, they will all tell you, no, Greg was and still is a Christian. Not to say he's perfect, but this he doesn't do it for show. You know what I mean? If you wake that brother up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're gonna find the same Greg that's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's gonna be the same person, if you would. And so I would just encourage people, man, Zach, to make sure that you let your faith be real, right? Don't feel like you got to turn it on when you're in front of people, and don't feel like you got to turn it off when you're not in front of people. And understand, people have to understand the Christian walk is the walk that we have with Christ is something that's meant to be 24/7, right? So
yeah,
God don't want us to walk around and say, "Oh, holy art thou," and speak like King James English and things like that. It's like, no, He wants us to live and have fun, but that doesn't mean that your fun has to separate Him out of the equation, right? And so it's good to go see a movie and go out and have fun and all that kind of stuff, but we need to make sure we're doing it in the parameters that God has for us, because if we do it in godly parameters, that's where safety is at. That's where productivity for your life still can take place. But when we go outside of those healthy parameters, right? It's just like relationship between a husband and a wife, right? If you try to conduct that kind of relationship outside of marriage, a lot of bad things tend to come with that, right? But if it's conducted in marriage, then all good things are going to come from that. If you live in the way and walking it out the way Christ wants us to walk it out. So I would just, encourage people, man, to make sure that you don't exclude that relationship with Christ when you're doing something that you may feel like, well, this is out of the church, so I need to do it this way. It's like, no, 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 no. God didn't mean for us to live inside of the church 24/7, but He did mean for the church to live inside of us 24/7. You understand? And so He understands, hey, you can go and have fun and kick it with the guys and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to exclude me from that. You don't have to compartmentalize your life to say, okay, well, God ain't in over here. God is everywhere. So we need to make sure that we welcome that Spirit of God in everything that we do in life.
Are you passionate about giving every student the opportunity to receive a Christian education? At ACSTO, we transform tax credit donations into valuable tuition scholarships, making private Christian education affordable for Arizona families. Join us in our mission to ensure no family ever has to say, "We wish we could put our children in a Christian school, but we just can't afford it." With over 25 years of dedication, we've awarded over $346 million in scholarships, thanks to the support of generous donors like you. Visit acsto.com to learn more and make a difference today. ACSTO, because every student deserves a Christian education.
Yeah, that's so good. And we're in the world, but not of the world. And
That's right.
you look at Jesus didn't sit in a church all day and wait for people to come to him. He also went out into the neighboring areas and communities and other countries and cities to share the gospel, to make his name known and to encourage people. And so, your faith, you can recite Bible verses left and right to your teammates on the practice field, try and get them to church, but if you're out at a team function and you're not acting like you should be, then that is like that disconnect, right? But if you're
Yes.
acting and you're inviting Jesus into every aspect of your life, and you're at a movie or you're at dinner with your teammates, and they see you acting out what you've been preaching or telling to them, that speaks more than just being able to recite verses to them. It's how you act, how you live out your life, your relationship you're with your wife, the way you treat other people. That is a bigger testimony than just reciting verses at people
Yes.
all day. And
Yeah.
so it's so cool to hear you when walk that out in the NFL.
Yes, it's what you're speaking about is just like the Pharisees in the Bible when Jesus was walking the earth, right? It's like, okay, if you could be a as they say, a fly on the wall in the biblical times, right? Just to observe, and that same fly on the wall in 2024, it's like a lot of the religious leaders that the world deemed as religious leaders today, to be honest with you, and I'm not criticizing every religious leader, I'm not. But according to the Bible, the Pharisees in Jesus' times were the religion leaders, right? And so to the world, they look like, okay, this is the representation of God. This is how God wants us to be, right? But no, that was not it, right? They walked around and just start busting out praying in the streets and things like that. And it's like, okay, wow, they are really holy. It's like, no, their hearts are not pure. They are doing that to draw attention so the world can say, man, I am so saved that I can just stop right here in the middle of the street and just start praying. That's how saved I am. And I'm not saying it's like street preaching. That's great. I'm not taking anything away from that. There's a part of the body of Christ that needs that. Don't be a street preachers. You keep going. That's what God called you to do. But what I am saying is that we have to make sure that we're not living our life like the Pharisees did, right? When we're seeing some wrong, somebody sinning, and now here we come to save the day with our old holy self, and we got the "What Would Jesus" bracelet do on, and we got 5 crosses across our neck, and we got this gown on, we walking around like we Jesus. It's like, no, that's not it. You're doing that to show off. Now, if you do got 5 crosses, then "What Would Jesus" bracelet do, and your heart is pure, that's where God has you working and doing your business at for Christ. Nothing wrong with that. But everybody has to make sure that their hearts are pure. Because understand, that's what God judges, not the outward appearance. God judges the inward appearance. So we have to make sure whatever we're doing, especially when we're saying we're doing it in the name of the Lord, are you truly doing it in the name of the Lord, letting Him lead you versus you doing this for the attention of the world.
Yeah, that's the thing too. When you're talking about dreams and goals of being an NFL player, it's also aligning to what God's will is. And so, how can you invite God into that career and make those things happen? Because you see sometimes too where people just try and say, "Okay, God, I want to be a Major League Baseball player. You're going to help me get there," but then they don't actually put in the work on their faith side and the sports side. They just kind of hope and rely that God's going to make that happen for them without putting the work in. And so that's what's so cool about what we're talking about. And really, it's been a testament throughout your whole life. Um, Putting in the hard work behind the scenes, growing in your faith with Christ, understanding that you can't just go out there and say, hey, Jesus is king. Yes, that's great and all, but has your heart been changed? Has he worked in your heart and through your life? What does that look like behind the scenes? Same with you can't just, if Greg Ellis just walked out there one day and put on a Cowboys jersey, I'm sure you look great in the jersey, but if you're not present in practice and putting in the work, you're going to get found out very fast. Once the national anthem goes out, man, what has Greg been doing? Eating cheeseburgers this whole time? I don't know. But that's just, the reality is you got to put in that work behind the scenes. And that's the beauty of recognizing that sport and faith is so intertwined and the principles that God has laid out in the scriptures can be applied so easily to the athlete's life. And that's what, I get excited just talking about that in those ways of, man, I wish when I was a kid, someone was alongside of saying, hey, all these biblical principles, this is how you can apply that and live that out on the field. You don't have to wait for a player to come to church with you to share the gospel. You can share the gospel through the way you live your life on the practice, in the batting cage, in the weight room, and all those aspects.
Because when you choose to verbalize how, if you choose to verbalize your Christian faith by just talking it out, it's like you have to realize more and more eyes are going to be on you because those same guys that you are calling yourself ministering to, now they're looking at you. They're looking at you when things don't go right on the football field in your favor. How are you going to respond, right? You know, are you that guy that's ready to cuss all of your teammates out when things don't go the way you think they should go? Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with getting on your teammates, but there's a right and a wrong way to go about that, especially if you are ministering and witnessing to people, right? And so when you're doing that, you're causing a lot of attention to be brought to yourself. So if you choose to do that, and that's good, right? Minister to people, witness to people, but make sure your actions supersedes what's coming out your mouth.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. There's so much truth in that, Greg. So, kind of now backing out of your time with the NFL, you go into coaching. Now you're back with the Cowboys as an assistant coach, helping with that. But you're also kind of have this charity or organization that you founded in Getting My Help. Tell us a little bit about that and that journey and what you feel like God is kind of instilling and calling. What is the goal of that organization?
For its coaching, Zach, I love football, man. It was so much fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I always want to be around it in some aspect. When I first retired from playing, right, I had coaches that say, "Hey, Greg, you need a coach. You got a coach." And these are some pretty, Bill Parcells, Mike Zimmerman, coaches like Wade Phillips. So a lot of, Hall of Fame recognizable coaches told me, "Hey, Greg, you will be a good coach. You got a coach." And I would tell them, I say, you know what, I love it, man, and definitely want to do it one day. But this day, I felt my family was too young. Our kids, my wife and our kids, we have 3 kids. And at that time, I felt like, you know what, they are too young for us to do it, for me to do it right now. And so I was blessed to keep, a finger involved with coaching, meaning I used to go to Minnesota. I went to Cincinnati for about 2 or 3 years, a week here, a week there to help to work with guys on pass rushing. Then when Mike Zimmer became the head coach of Minnesota, again, I used to go up there a week here, a couple of days there, and work with his guys on pass rushing stuff. And so that gave me the opportunity to continue to stay involved with football. Um, In the midst of that, though, I started a production company, and still discovered a new love that I had. I majored in communications in college and used to do a lot of theater work, but I never thought I'd have the opportunity to actually use it, man. And so that's been so fulfilling for me as well. Um, and people say, what's the bottom line with theater and your production work? It's that I thoroughly enjoy helping people. And one of the best ways you can help somebody, other than witness to them about Jesus, is to witness to them about life and things and how to live life and learning stuff that they can learn from, that they can benefit from and help enhance their life, if you would. And so, um, one of our stage performance plays we have is called Watch Night. Watch Night helps educate people about the Emancipation Proclamation. Okay, and so Watch Night service is a service that a lot of churches have. They have it on New, and some don't. They forgot the name. They don't know the name of it. But that tradition is on New Year's Eve, right? People will come to church. Some will stay, to 12:01 to say, okay, we spent the night in the church, and they do it in honor of thanking God for blessing them, for making it through another year, and praying for God's blessing upon the upcoming year, which is great. But that Traditions Act started in 1862, going into 1863, when the Emancipation Proclamation actually went into effect, because it went into effect 1863, New Year's Day. Well, New Year's Eve, that night, slaves gathered together. Not all slaves, of course, but some slaves gathered together because they knew they were going to be free at the strike of 12:01 the next day. And so they got together praising God and fellowshipping with each other because the anticipation of their new freedom was
Yeah.
going to come. And that's how where that came from. And so we have a stage production play that we went to several different I'm not countries, but cities, a couple different states, performing that as well. We have another one that's called Juneteenth, and that one educated people on why and how Texas took an extra 2.5 years to free their slaves, right? And that play has actually been credited for helping Juneteenth, along with this lady named Miss Opal Lee, and she lives in Fort Worth, Texas, and I know her, and we've done some stuff together. But she's led the way. But when we had the play, that was credited for helping Juneteenth to become a national holiday as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
um, to the point that the city of Dallas, when they raised their Juneteenth flag for the first time, man, they actually asked me to do the honors of raising the flag for the first time in history. And I was like, wow, this is cool. But again, both of those things is about helping educate people about our past so we can move forward as a stronger nation. Um, and the one we did a movie about a movie that's called Carter High. Um, that movie, it went to the movie theaters, did pretty good. Um, it was basically the story about some football players, great football team, but they made some bad choices. They won a state championship and all this stuff. Had to battle with some legal stuff about that. But after they win the state championship, then they're bigger than Dallas Cowboys all of a sudden, and they go and start breaking some rules, robbing some convenience stores and things like that. And so the majority of these kids are on their way to college, but because of those bad mistakes, scholarships were taken away, and prison sentences were issued out, right? And so that story is just to teach kids nowadays. It's like, man, look, I don't care how talented you are. It's like you still have to comply and do things the right way and follow these rules. Because if you don't, it can all be taken away just by one bad decision. And that's what happened there. Um, we currently have a movie, hadn't been released yet either. And it's called My Dear. And it's a movie that deals with mental health. Okay. And this will be my last story, man. I told you I got a lot of them. Man, and I won't mention this guy's. Well, I can mention his name, but this is not his story. I don't know him personally, so this is not his story. But I dealt with a lot of guys that have suffered or suffering from mental health disorders while I was playing football, and even obviously when I retired and other people retired around me. But the one that for some reason, man, I never met him was Junior Seau. I've never met Junior, but for some reason, when I heard when he, ended his life by way of suicide, it just touched me in a way that I couldn't explain. And so for me, I wanted to help people. I started to pay attention more to a lot of people who were struggling with that same thing, and even myself. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna write a script, and did that, and got my co-writer to help out with that deal. And so now we got a movie script ready. And so we produced, we filmed the movie, did the movie, and all that kind of stuff. And then I would share the synopsis of the movie with other people. And every time I would share it, Zach, with them, man, they had something that they could relate to in their personal life with them or somebody that was close to them, right? Like at that time, I was at a college, coaching at a college in Texas, small college. And one of my assistant coaches, when I shared with him, what we're doing with this movie, the synopsis of it, he said, Coach, man, my brother committed suicide. And I'm like, wow, man. And so it just was person after person. And so I said, okay, we need to do more than just make them, have this movie. And so that's what birthed it, Getting My Help, our nonprofit foundation. And we concentrate on bringing awareness to mental health. Our long-term goal is to just approach. We got 7 different areas that we want to approach. That's from nutrition, from finances, recreational living, employment, um, education, attack those areas, right, to make sure that mental health is not limiting people or prohibiting people from living that holistic, healthy life, productive, healthy life. And so that's our goal. That's our end goal mission. And like I said, the way that we're working to get there is through creating content and community events. Like we had 2 walkathons thus far. We're young, we're just getting started, but the goal is to do 98 walkathons across the country. We got the movie, the My Dear movies about mental health as well. We have the app, it's Getting My Help app. People can go to the app store. It's free, so go download that. It is evolving, meaning growing, and so we did the best we can do to get it up and get it going. And it's not always easy to get it on those platforms so people can actually go and get it, but thank God that part is done, and so we're continuing to develop that. The app, we have videos on the app. We only have, I think, 4 or 5 of them now, but it's people. We have 2 retired football players and some other people, recognizable people. But it's simple, just allowing them and asking them to share what they're comfortable with sharing with their mental health challenges that they had to endure themselves, right? And so they did that, and I appreciate them for doing that because that's not always easy. But I would say this, because I was there when they did it, and it was like therapy for them, man, to be able to open up and talk about it, and that's part of the rehab process when you're talking about mental health as well. And so that went good. The other side, and there are more than 2 sides, but the main 2 sides are again those videos. And if you feel like, okay, well, I saw Greg Ellis sharing his testimony about his mental health challenges, and so I want to get some help. If Greg got some help, then it's cool for me to get some help. And so we have a resource category where people can go and see if anybody, relates to them that they feel that can help them. We don't have that many resources, but again, that's why I use the word. The app is continuing to develop and grow. And so we're constantly adding more resources and more videos to it as well.
Yeah, I love that. So make sure you go check out the app, some of their online resources, because that is another thing that the enemy tries to do is he tries to make it seem like you're the only one dealing with these issues. You're the only one dealing with these problems, and so you hold it in. And then seeking help, seeking out resources like this that you've got going on, Greg, is so crucial because you're not alone in these situations and these things. Um, there's really nothing new under the sun. So there's people in the Bible, other things have been dealing with these same kind of situations and these things for, as long as the world has been around. And so
Yeah.
by being open and by seeking that help and even what you said with some of these other guys, just sharing their side of what they've experienced can be so so freeing to know that, hey, hey, I've gone through something just like that. Or people that you look up to, such as Greg and these athletes, they've gone through a lot of these same things. They're human just like us. And so being able to realize that you're not alone in this journey, there are people to help you, is a huge step. And it takes people like Greg and your team of volunteers and whoever else is involved to be open and vulnerable about sharing those things and those experiences, to be a light to encourage others to seek help and to kind of live in that freedom.
Yep. No, you're exactly right. And so, we're doing the best that we can do. And so it's challenging, right, to start a new foundation, um, because it takes resources to do everything, man. And so you do the best you can do with what you have, and that's another message that I always encourage people to do is that if God put something on your heart to do, which I feel God has put this foundation on my heart to do, is that start where you are at, right? God respects those humble beginnings that you're at, right? And again, kind of like we spoke about earlier, right? Be found faithful with the little that you have, because understand that little that you have, those two pieces of fish, can eventually feed 5,000 people if left in the potter's hand to be manipulated the right way. And so that's our task, is not to complain about what we don't have, what God is saying, but look what I did bless you with. So what can you do or willing to do with that? And if we had everything we needed when we started something, then we couldn't get it accomplished, because remember, the first part of pleasing God is to have faith, right? The whole faith walk starts with having faith as a side of a mustard seed. And so long as you got a mustard seed size faith, and you're willing to exercise and function with that, then God is going to be faithful and supply the things that you need to conduct His business.
That's so good. Greg, this has been such a pleasure to just be here with you and talk through this. We've seen lots of highlights and we get to see you in that light, but just to hear your heart and what God has done in your life and continues to do, it's just such a blessing to be a part of it and hear. And I know everyone listening is going to be super excited and on board. So go ahead, check out, Getting My Help, the website, check out the app, and check that out and help just share the word about it. You may not be going through something like that, but someone, your neighbor, someone in your family may be, and they just haven't vocalized it yet. So please help share the word on what Greg and the team is doing. It's something that needs to be talked about a lot more. So thank you, Greg, for being a groundbreaker and putting the hard work on that.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to, as kind of like a parting pass with the people listening? One, if you're like, this is the biggest piece of advice that someone gave you, what would you give to those kids to encourage them?
The thing that my parents gave me, in which I've said it already, and I wish it could be something world shaking and dynamic, but it goes back to the basics, man. And those two things: keep God first, and be willing to outwork people. If you do that, you'll be so surprised with what you will be able to accomplish in your lifetime.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks again, Greg. If you don't mind, I'd like to pray for you before
No,
we
man,
sign.
I appreciate it. Please do, brother.
Awesome. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for the chance just to be here with Greg and talk about his heart and what you're stirring in his heart and doing through his efforts, God. Pray that you'll just put a big blessing on Getting My Help, God. That's something that's so near and dear to Greg's heart and to so many others that can really make a big life change, and help people out that may be hurting or going through significant issues, God. Pray that they'll hear this message and those listening will share that as well, that people will just seek out and start talking about this issue of mental health more. It's so prevalent in today's culture, and for whatever reason, people just don't want to talk about it. They kind of shy away from it. But God, I pray that you'll just open hearts and minds that people will have that conversation and discuss it and work through and everyone. I pray for the funding and all the support that's needed for that organization, God, that you'll just provide for their needs and amplify their efforts. I know a lot of times with these small organizations that it's just a couple people that have a punching weight of an army that might seem like a lot more, but it's only a couple people down at the core. Pray that you just multitude their efforts and bless their efforts. And we say this in your name. Amen.
Amen.